It wasn't fucking easy. There was emptiness or stress or pressure. Is this really it?
How did you get out of that?
5 years ago, I set out on a journey to figure out why the fuck, even though I'd achieved so many things externally, why the internal was not calm and was not at peace. And I have processes. And what I learned was
Men's coach Pete Taylor.
the core thing that I work with all guys through is figuring out where in their lives they're still acting like a boy. And it's hard to handle that when you're a 40-year-old man and you can be like, right there, that's boyish, that's 17-year-old, that's 16-year-old. And then throughout, every guy has seen the same pattern. Like, we have lost.
Absolutely. Today, I'm joined by men's coach Pete Taylor, who helps men understand themselves, break unhealthy patterns, and step more fully into the man they want to become in the future. Pete, I've been looking forward to this, mate. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks, Johnny. How are you?
I'm all right. As you know, got a little bit of sciatica, but I won't complain about it. I'm sat on a hot water bowl. It is what it is, mate. We push on, right?
We do, mate, and it's men going through their struggles, and it's typically where we get the lessons. We don't necessarily get the lessons from the wins. We get it from the struggles and the challenges and the adversity.
What's the lesson here for me, do you think?
Perseverance, man. It's,
I love it.
it is perseverance. It's resilience. I like the Stoics, the way that they talk about their virtues as guys, and they talk about a virtue called temperance. And temperance is the ability to have everything and also have nothing and still be good. And so it's the ability to have, you know, the Porsche on the drive, the 5-bedroom detached house, the big garden, the steak on your plate, is to have the luxuries and enjoy that. But equally, that same night, go and sleep on the streets in the cold and have nothing and still be good and still be calm and still persevere. But I think that's a beautiful analogy for life, is that it's being able to take the good and the bad and the ugly, and you still keep going and you still don't let it affect you to the point where it puts you into despair.
I think it's recognizing that everything is temporary, whether it be a really, really, really challenging time in your life or whether it be the height of happiness, that it's always temporary. I remember once I was talking to Phil Lerney on the podcast, and we were talking about defining what good health is. And we both were debating it, talking about it, exploring it. And then he said, you know, for some people, good health is just being pain-free. And now I'm in pain all the time. I'm thinking to myself, man, when I'm not pain-free, imagine what I can do. But yet when I'm pain-free, sometimes I doubt myself. So it's that reminder that actually just being pain-free is a win. It's an absolute win. You're winning the day. Like, as someone who's in pain currently, I would agree with that. But you ask me in a week or so, hopefully when I'm not in pain, maybe I might take it for granted. So I suppose it's a lesson in not taking things for granted.
For sure. It's like, whenever we're sick, what's the only fucking thing we want?
Yeah.
It's to be
Absolutely.
well.
It's to be well. Absolutely. And I think that's a really good baseline to remember. I think for me now, like I say, give a lot to be pain-free. But mate, I appreciate you, man. And I'm going to start this podcast the same way I start most podcasts. I'm going to ask you about yourself. And I want to start by saying, how did you become Pete Taylor?
Okay, short version is I built a successful bricks and mortar architecture firm, and 5 years ago I sold that. And from the outside, it looked like I'd achieved exponential success, fancy cars on the drive, big house in the country, one of those lawns that's big enough to sit on a lawnmower. Awards, not just awards from the culture that we built at the business, but personal awards for my own career in fitness modeling and bodybuilding, which I did as a little bit of a side hustle. And despite all those things, there was this internal lack, internal murmuring for something more. 5 years ago, when I left my architecture firm, I set out on a journey of self-discovery and introspection and shadow work and nervous system regulation and psychological work to figure out why the fuck, even though I'd achieved so many things externally, why the internal was not calm and was not at peace, and it was in moments of despair. And so I set up Heroic Man, and since then over 1,000 men have gone through the process of becoming heroic and becoming better men, better fathers, better husbands, better leaders, and figuring out what's going on in our mind. And that leads me to where we are today.
It always interests me when I ask people, how did they become who they are, where they go with it. whether they talk about their childhood, whether they talk about parenting that they experienced, whether they talk about their business, whether they talk about their partner, whether they talk about an event that happened to them. It's always very interesting to me to see where people go and how brief they keep it. That's always interesting as well. I mean, first of all, that sounds like you achieved what most people would dream of having as a measure of success. But yet you experienced a discomfort, an unfulfillment. What word would you use to describe it?
Something was missing.
Right.
There was a lack.
Lack.
There was an emptiness. And I've since come to learn that this is something called the deprivation cycle. And the deprivation cycle is where we go through periods of want. So we'll feel hungry. We can actually just frame this to food. Like we'll feel hungry, and our stomach feels empty, and then so we'll then have a desire to go and fill that need. So then we'll go and we'll grab something from the fridge, and that's our act. We'll act and we'll eat, and then we'll feel full. But that feeling of fullness is temporary, because 3 hours later, we then have that feeling again where we're empty. We're like, I'm empty. I'm starving. I feel lack. My desire is that I'm going to go and get some food again. I'll go and get that food. I'll eat it. And it's this consistent temporary fullness. We can use the same analogy for parts of our life. We go on these missions and quests to build businesses or build careers and build relationships. And sometimes if we're doing these things for the wrong reasons, we'll go through this consistent cycle of deprivation where we're empty and we're starving and we feel lack. And so we'll go and fill that up with achievement and progress and performance. And inevitably, I remember when we hit our first million, I acknowledged it for like 10 minutes and then we're on to the next thing. And so it's like this temporary fulfillment. It's very, very temporary. And then we're on to the next. The thing that I came to recognize is that everything that I was chasing was external.
There's quite a lot of words there that I feel quite important. Something being missing, empty, lack, deprivation cycle. But then one of the words that really puts it into context was you were doing it for the wrong reason. That's interesting, right? Because I think a lot of people do that, even as simple as followers on Instagram, let's say. We've all met influencers that would do anything to get to their first 10K. And then they get to their first 10K and it's not enough. They want 20K, then they want 50K, then they want 100K. Now they're looking at 1 million. And then when they get there, that's not going to be enough either. It's never going to give you what you think you want, because that's not what you want. You've not looked into it. In a sense, I suppose it's a way of emotionally avoiding. So I think you make a great point there, chasing that success or that version of success or whatever you think it is as a method of righting that wrong or getting that thing that's going to make you feel the way you think you're going to feel, only to get there and to find that you don't feel like that. So it must mean I need to do more. And how did you get out of that?
It wasn't fucking easy. I'd love to say, and to be honest, like now that I've been working on this for the last 5 years and I've worked with a lot of guys, I have now processes that speed up the process, but I didn't have a process when I started doing this. It requires a lot of introspection, and it requires acknowledging that the deprivation cycle is looking to fill you up, but what it's not giving you is giving you a sense of external fullness, but what it's not giving you is internal fulfillment, and they're very different. And what I learned was it's all to do with the internal, nothing to do with the external. And that's not to say that going out and achieving things externally isn't great, because it is great. I love building businesses. I love external achievement, but it has to be done for the right reasons. And it has to be done in sync with you sorting out what's going on internally. Has to be. Otherwise you end up climbing wrong mountains.
It's so true. It's why I see all the time when people go on their career development or they work on a business that they don't work on themselves at the same time. And I think that's a massive error, because what we're essentially talking about, it might be simplifying it somewhat, but we're talking about them expectations, right? What we expect to happen when we get to this marker, when we get our first million. There's going to be this feeling and we build it up. And when you get there, it can't possibly be what you've imagined it to be. It just can't. It's essentially nothing really changes. Like, you don't gain anything, as if you will. You just be able to look at your bank balance and go, yeah, that's amazing. And yes, there's all the hard work and all of that comes with it. But I think sometimes one of the hardest things for a person to experience is goal completion. That's a nightmare. I think a great way to put it would be like a wedding. Like you're building up to a wedding, right? And you're looking forward to the wedding, and the wedding day is going to be amazing, and you're going to get married, and there's going to be photographers, and there's going to be attention, there's going to be all these amazing things, and then the next day it's gone. Well, what now? Although you've had the best day, it feels like you've lost something. There's almost like a grief. There's almost like a grief, like grieving the build up to the wedding or build up to the business launch or the build up to the first million or whatever it is. There's like this grief that comes with it afterwards.
So true. Very, very true.
So you've developed different formulas and methods of things to speed it up. But when you were in that situation, what was the catalyst? What was the emotion that you was experiencing on a consistent basis, or maybe emotions that were really signaling to you that something wasn't quite right and that a change was needed?
Yeah, well, there was emptiness. There was a lot of stress. There was a lot of pressure. There was, is this really it? Is this just more of this? There was there was a lot of anger. I felt a lot of internal anger that I wasn't releasing. I wasn't doing anything with, so I just kept it all inside, and then it would just come out in random moments. Normally, random moments with the people that actually don't deserve it. So there was a whole fucking host of emotions that was going on. It wasn't just one.
Yeah, I mean, anger's a massive one, especially amongst men. And the irony of it, I suppose, is it's rarely about anger, right? It's about something else most of the time. If it was about something else, if that anger was about something else, what do you think it would have been about?
Oh, I know. I know is that I was, part of this was essentially just letting other people do what they wanted to do and me not saying anything about it. And so I was building up a lot of resentment internally, and that resentment led to anger. The anger then would, in spouts, turn into aggression. And so it was my own lack of boundaries. It was my own lack of agreements, and that, I can track that back now and see. Okay, I can see like moments now where in my past that would have formulated and that stemmed into a prison and a program that I'd formed as part of my belief system, and then allowed that to happen through moments in my life. So yeah, it come out in all sorts of places.
Mate, the reason I push on this is because I think that you are a very successful man, and I think that you're quite exceptional in the way that you articulate yourself. My first experience of you was at the Red Bull event. And I honestly, if you had been looking at me, I would have been nervous that you knew my life. Because some of the stuff that you were saying, I was like, damn, I felt seen. You were definitely talking about some stuff that I'd experienced. And the reason I push on it is because what I would love is for that man or woman or any gender that's listening right now to be able to listen to this and go, yeah, because it is a very unique problem. It's a very unique problem. It does come at multiple stages in many different ways. Some might argue it's the same problem. It just amplifies as you become more successful. But I think you talking about boundaries is, to me, is a real yeah, that's it, isn't it? And then that's why it's so important for you to grow as a person at the same time as your business grows. Because if you've got a lapse of boundaries when you're just starting out, yeah, that could be really bad and really negatively impact you. But it's not going to have the significant impact as it does right at the top if you don't resolve it. You might think to yourself, oh, when I get here, I'll look at that, or I won't let that happen again. But as you grow as a business, the pressure, as you spoke about, gets more and more intense. If you can't say no here, by the time the pressure gets all the way up here, you're definitely not going to say no. You're definitely not going to put that person in a place and hold them boundaries. I think that there are elements of your development that are very typical, and I think a lot of people will hear themselves in it. Where do you think it comes from?
I know where it comes from. I work with men specifically, and this is throughout. Every guy that I've worked with have seen the same pattern. We all, as humans, we work in patterns. We are programmed to work with patterns. And like the core that I see with men is that it's going from boy to man. It's going from immature ego into complete, mature masculine, being a complete man. And we have lost stages and processes of initiation. There's no initiation in today's world from going from a boy into a man. And because of that, the ego does look to develop, and it will find ways during your life to initiate. A lot of people now are finding initiation through relationships. They will seek opposites in relationships. And the relationships can then be toxic and turmoil and clash, and that's part of initiation. It's part of the internal immature structure trying to break out by causing chaos and adversity. It's the core thing that I see with, it doesn't matter whether the guy is 28 or 48, there's a lot of, and it shows up in very, very different ways. It shows up in extremely, all the way from procrastinating on building a personal brand, I don't know, for example, all the way through to not being able to have a conversation of conflict with their partner and seeking permission with their partner, or staying quiet, or stonewalling, or just getting defensive when something comes up. Like, all of these things are immature. And it's probably it's the core thing that I work with all guys through, is figuring out where in their lives that they're still acting like a boy. And it's hard to handle that when you're a 40-year-old man and you're 45-year-old man or 35-year-old man, and we're like, you know what, right there, that's boyish, that's 17-year-old, that's 16-year-old. And you've got to face that and figure out why that is still happening, and then go through what I call excavation. We'll excavate internally and then dismantle the parts of that man that are still very immature, dismantle the parts of the ego that just don't serve you anymore, and then rebuild.
Mate, again, like I said, beautifully articulated. And I wonder how much of that is almost exclusively about a man being able to take accountability for his own behavior. And I say able because there are people out there that when they have conversations, like you say, with moments of conflict, you might as well be speaking a different language that they don't speak. Because it's not that they're not willing to do the thing or to meet you halfway. They don't know how. They just don't know how. The words that you're saying, it don't mean anything to them. They're just not capable of solving this problem. And I wonder whether that's what you mean when you say from going from man to boy, the boy being very impulsive and chasing dopamine and pleasure and all of those different things. Whereas as a man, we take accountability for our actions. We can lean into that delayed gratification. And again, it doesn't mean that we enjoy it as such, but we can see the future. We can strategize. We can say, yeah, actually, if I hold off a minute, then maybe this will work out differently. I mean, how much of it do you think is accountability?
Accountability does play a big part, without doubt. I'd love to say that I'll teach you to be 100% self-accountable. And I just haven't cracked that yet. And that's the truth. But I know this, and this is why I'm a huge advocate of men being around other solid guys and other guys that are growing, but also other guys that will hold a standard very high, and also actually understand a bit ago that what goes on in your brain and in your intellect and in your psyche. So you can say to another guy, hey man, that's not right what you've just said. That's an old way of thinking. That's not serving you. Here's a standard to hold, and I'm going to hold you to that change. I've had it this morning actually I get all my guys to do a report, and the reports are very powerful because they actually have to take time out and they type, and it's not fucking AI or they're not, they have to physically type out a report and send it back to me. And one of the guys said, oh, Pete, I've got the report. I'll send it to you this Friday. I'm like, good. We will hold you to that accountability that you've committed to sending the report this Friday. What this means for this particular guy is that he's going to take time for himself. He's going to take time for himself and then produce that report and work. And he'll gain from that. He'll work on himself. And the reason I repeated for himself is because men don't typically put themselves first. They put others first. They put their wife first, put their kids first, they put their team first, they put other people first, and then they come fifth in the pecking order. Again, it's immature.
Yeah, do you think that's always the case, or do you think that is a reflection of growing responsibility as a business owner or someone chasing success?
I think that's what society teaches for guys, is that they don't come first. I think that's drummed in. And one of the questions that you asked me was about men being useful. And actually, it's innate for us to want to be useful. It's part of our DNA, but where that becomes an issue is when you put everyone else above you so you can be useful to them. If we think about that, putting everyone else above you, you're then looking up to people. They're then on a pedestal, and that's a problem.
One of the examples you used earlier was likening the whole man to boy thing in relationships. And I think a trap that I very often see a man fall into with his own ego is having a conversation with his partner and maybe not knowingly, but definitely pursuing being right instead of solving the problem and looking at the solution, which might not be the solution he brought to the table. It could be a different one, or one that hasn't even been suggested yet. But it's that waiting for the other person to stop talking so you can tell them why they're wrong and you're right without really even listening or taking in any new information. That I see almost all the time. Yeah. How about you? Did you see that a lot?
Oh God, yeah. In my own growth, that's been one of my biggest areas of growth is to be able to sit and listen and remove judgment and remove I know the answer. I'm going to fix this. I
Mm,
know the answer to her problem. I'm going to fix it. And
yeah,
removing that's a skill set. And this, a lot, I refer to the Navy SEALs. Think about the Navy SEALs, right? They're the best in the world, best of the best. What do every day? They train every day. They repeat the same thing over and over and over and over. They train and train and train until the time comes where they may have to then use their training skills. It's the same for us guys, particularly in the areas that are important to us and that fulfill a lot of our lives, our relationships. Like it requires training and introspection and going, okay, this doesn't work. Every time I try and fix her problems, she's
absolutely.
she doesn't respond well, even though I know I've got the answer. Okay, this requires some training.
Me and my wife have this thing now where when she starts talking and she's clearly distressed, I'll say, do you need me to listen or do you need me to help you find solutions? She's like, I just need you to listen. Cool. Then I know, Johnny, shut up. Anything you have to say is not helpful. Just shut your
Yeah.
mouth and listen.
Listening is a skill set. To be able
Mm.
to listen, I like actually listen, not just be there and like hear some words, but to actually listen beneath what she's saying is a real skill set. And women are great emotional creatures. She'll be able to feel that you're listening beyond just hearing her words. It's a real skill set. But again, it takes time. It takes training to be able to expand your own nervous system to be able to sit and hold a real conversation rather than try and fix it. What our brains will do, our brains are very good at this, and this is part of the ego, is it will just validate our own wants and needs. But what the ego will never do is challenge our wants and needs to see whether they're actually right or to see whether they still serve us. But it will fucking validate them. And it's so important that we come to terms with that and bring awareness to that and know that everything that our brain's telling us that is right isn't always right.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. No, it couldn't hurt. You couldn't have said it better myself. I think it's about becoming aware of those behaviors that aren't serving us. You said it so well. Like every time I have this conversation like this happens, but yet no change seems to happen. I just keep having the same conversation over and over again because there's, first of all, some awareness that needs to be there, but there's also some accountability that actually, if it keeps happening, then maybe you're feeding that direction of that conversation. I read a book called Influence, and they were talking about how there are trigger behaviors within us as humans. And they were saying that they use it a lot in sales. So for example, if they put a price up on something, automatically people find it more desirable. They think because it's more expensive, it increases the value of it with them. And I think that happens a lot in all conversations and interactions, regardless whether it's business or personal. Something that really helped me with what we're talking about here was Eric Burns' pack model, you know, the pack model where it's parent, adult, child. I found that fascinating because I never realized it until it was put so simplistically that if you behave in that parental way where you're finger pointing and you know more and you're talking down to someone, being slightly derogatory because, you know, as a parent, we are looking after someone, we are in charge, that you're forcing that person to behave like a child. They're now going to go like, whatever, mate. Like, but if I'm here now, right, and I start like, oh, I know about this. Shut up, Pete. I'm going to tell you about it. And I'm going to point my finger and I'm going to talk down to you. You're literally going to think, dickhead. And you're going to start behaving a little bit like childishly because you're losing interest and you're losing respect and you're feeling disrespected. And vice versa. If I start behaving like a child, if I start behaving childishly, I'm forcing you to go, all right, Johnny, reel it in. Calm down, mate.
Yeah.
You know, so it was that adult to adult thing. And I think what that is, and I think he goes as far as, but doesn't say it, is having a respect. Is me coming in saying, Pete, I respect you. You clearly respect me. Let's have a conversation about this thing that we're in conflict about. And it's the same in relationships. It's that respect. It's that not thinking I know what's best for you. As a coach, when we've had conversations about it when we were at the event, you know, I know that we start with the ethos that we don't know what's best for you, that you do. My job is to ask challenging questions, is to explore, is to poke and prod and to knock down a few walls until you start. Because sometimes those people haven't even confessed what's true to themselves yet, you know? So we're trying to get them to do that. Do you feel like that's an important part of it, building those relationships as a man, is being able to work out how to find that way of having adult to adult conversations with respect? Or do you think it's an insecurity?
Well, it is an insecurity for sure. If you can't do that, then it's absolutely an insecurity. But guys having respectful conversations around a campfire and talking about the depths of life, that goes back to our heritage and our ancestors. And there needs to be more of that. There really needs to be more of that, and it's that is part of our heritage, is men talking to other men and being in a community of other guys and holding standards of other guys is really, really important. And having respect for each other is very, very important. Respect for another. If you have lack of respect for someone else, it just points 3 times back to you on your own self-respect.
A lot of your methods and the way that you talk and the things that you put out there, they do feel very in touch with ancestral stuff. You know, it does feel like you're going back to something that's forgotten, like forgotten wisdom almost, you know? And I think that even comes across in your branding with the whole heroic man thing, you know, all of those things. It's like you're really trying to nurture a man to be brave, to self-lead, to step forward, to face what I think is often a root of most of the challenges that we have as men, and it's fear, is that we're scared and we'd like, I'm not owning, like, I know as a man, right, there's been multiple times in my life, many times today, where I've been scared, you know, up until, I don't know, maybe a decade, I'm not owning that. Men aren't scared. Men aren't scared. What I didn't know, though, was it's the exact ingredient needed to be brave. If you're not scared when you're being brave, then you're not being brave, are you? You're just doing stuff.
I'm a huge advocate, and part of the process that I will take men through is actually looking at levels of consciousness. And 5 years ago, asked me about consciousness, and I've gone, what the fuck is that? And now that I've done such deep research on this, and now knowing that the levels of consciousness and how they impact our lives, and the two real things that we need to be thinking about is power and force. And force really being a way that the vast majority of the world operates. And what that looks like in reality on a consciousness level is anything that's below fear. So whenever we're in fear, we're in a place of force. It's a place of negativity. It's a place of victim. Like we're feeling fear, and we can feel fear for a moment, and then we can jump up and we can move into a better place. But if we sit in fear for too long, it's actually in a place of victim, and it's in a place of negativity. And below fear is the likes of desire and apathy and guilt and shame and anger. They're all levels of consciousness that we'll go through, but they're all very, very low. We're in a place of shame, and all men go through, you know, we dip in and out of this, right? You stay in shame for too long, it can really put you in a bad place. The male suicide rate globally is massive. The percentage rates are alarming when you look at that. Typically, the studies say that when a man goes to a place where he's going to commit suicide, he's in a place of shame. He's at the very, very, very lowest place or levels of consciousness. But fear is actually the threshold. Fear is the gateway. And just above fear is courage. Just above it is courage. And when we can go into a place of courage, that's when we're moving into action. That's when we're moving into, there's a brighter future. Courage is, you're now in power. You're now in a better place. And you can move up the scale, and up the scale looks like acceptance, looks like neutrality, looks like enlightenment, looks like love. It's powerful. You're in a place of, we're growing now. It's not a place of being a victim.
It makes me think about that whole push and pull motivation. When you're being pushed by fear to do stuff and you're making decisions because you don't want this to happen or you do want that to happen, and you're scared and you're all of these different things. And then when you're being pulled because you've got this goal and you've got this passion, you've got this fire, you've got this ambition, and you want to move towards it. And that's what's driving you forward.
I had one of my clients message me on the weekend on Sunday about slipping in and out of motivation. 1 minute I feel great, I'm taking on the world. Next minute, the negative talks kicked in and I don't feel good, and I just don't want to go out on the runs or whatever he's doing that week. What's important to know about motivation is that it's fleeting. It comes and it goes. You have to acknowledge that. You have to know that we are not motivated 24/7, particularly to go and do the hard things. It's fleeting, and you need to be in this neutral state of whether I feel good or whether I feel great or whether I feel shit. I'm still going to move forward. I like just the term that there's only 2 types a day. There's a good day and there's a testing day. That's it. There's a good day and there's a testing. Some days are just fucking great. Sun's shining, wake up, we've got loads of energy, deals are happening, everything seems to be going the right way. Is a good fucking day. Other days is testing days. The sun might not be shining, might be raining outside, might be cold outside. Fucking, you might get a shitty email from a client. Maybe there's something's going on with your partner. It might be a testing day. Despite good or bad, we still move.
I always have what I call a healthy distrust of motivation when it comes along. I'm like, hey, wait. You know, because it's just going to dip on me when I need it the most, you know. But I sent you a whole bunch of questions. Obviously, I haven't got around to it. But that, like I say, that how did you become Pete Taylor? That always seems to bring up other questions for me. But I'm going to move on to those questions now because I suspect you probably prepped for them. And they're good questions. I think more importantly, I reckon your answers will be amazing too. So a lot of men grow up believing their values come from what they do, providing, working hard, solving problems. But when a man's entire identity is built around being useful to others, how does he begin to discover who he actually is outside of that role?
This goes back to what we were saying earlier about the core thing for men is moving from boy to man. I remember when I turned 30 and probably about, halfway into being 30, I was like, fucking hell. I'm now 30 years old and I look like a man, yet I have a lot of boyish tendencies. I'm like a man there's a boy inside, but I look like a man. And so this is the core thing that guys need to go through is the maturation from boy to man. And it doesn't normally appear in this like fucking spiritual awakening. Men, I tried this. I went to fucking Bali and I was like, I've got to go and sit on a mountain in Bali. Maybe that's going to give me the answers. I went there for a couple of weeks and didn't give me the answers. And it doesn't appear in these like moments of spiritual awakenings. It's normally murmurs of quiet devastation. Like the relationship just starts to fall apart. You start to get some success, but feels empty. It doesn't give you the thing you thought it was going to give you. And this is when it's about introspection. It's about going, hang on a minute. I'm trying all these fucking things. I still don't feel the way I think I should feel. What's going on internally? I do a lot of study on Jungian psychology and the way that he talks about, Carl Jung, the way that he talks about maturation and growing from boy to man is essentially all the internal parts of you that are fragmented, that are disjointed, is about pulling those apart and then putting them back together so you become whole, you become one. And that's the journey. That's what needs to happen. Is the internal work to pull all the parts of you that are not serving you anymore, dissolve the parts of the ego that are immature, and then so you become whole. And in doing so, your authenticity reaps out. In doing so, the deprivation cycle that I spoke about earlier, where we're seeking external fullness, you get internal fulfillment.
I think when men get to a stage where they've had enough pain, they've had enough discomfort, and that whatever they do next can't be any worse than the experiences they're having currently. I think when they look at themselves with honesty and truth and they start to make some decisions, one of the traps that they might fall into is judgment. They look at themselves and they see the places where they could be better. But instead of saying, okay, well, then how do I do that? What do I do next? It becomes, I'm just shit. I'm no good. I'm rubbish at this. I'm rubbish at that. I can't do this. I'll never do this. I'll never do that. All of that very permanent language that's obviously not permanent. So I've often found a way forward with that is to lean into a more compassionate way of looking at yourself, almost like you want to put on a pair of compassion glasses and look at yourself with a bit more compassion. But when you talk about looking at yourself introspectively, if you were to look at yourself compassionately, maybe you do or don't agree with that, I don't know. How would you do it? How would you analyze yourself without that judgment creeping in and sabotaging you, if you want to call it that?
Judgment's a powerful tool because when we can lean into judgment, particularly when we judge others, and this is all about great questioning, when we can look at how we judge others and then even like, let's just say that there's someone that's close to you that you judge. It could be your wife. It could be your business partner. It could be someone in your team. And you notice that judgment comes up and list out every area that you judge them. And then ask yourself where that judgment appears in you. And then ask yourself where that judgment doesn't appear in you, but you wish you had it. Your wife might just have this real freedom about her that she just doesn't really care much of what the world thinks. She just goes with the flow and she loves it. And she doesn't let things affect her the way that things affect you. And you're like, fuck, she's just like but it fucks you off. It pisses you off. Why is she so fucking flowy all the time? Well, actually, that's a beautiful freedom of mind, and she has that, and maybe that's something that you seek and you pine for in yourself. And so, judgment's a really powerful tool when we can reverse it back and look at ourselves with it. What's important here is identifying the program that you're sat in. When we go through life and then we start self-criticizing, like the inner critic comes in and there's self-doubt and it's like, am I good enough for this? And why does it always happen to me? And is there something wrong with me? Fuck, I could lose everything. These are all programs, and our programs do come from the past. It's something that we have picked up on, and then we've built a program. The program is our belief system. The way that I explain this to people is I call it the 5 Ps. So we have a past, and in the past, we have small things that happen to us and big things that happen to us. There could be big trauma, and it could be super, super traumatic, life-changing events. Or it could be small words on the playground, words from your mum, words from your dad. Small little things that seem small in the moment, but actually have an effect on you when you're a young boy or a teenager or even in your 20s. So we have a past. The past creates a program of there's something wrong with me. The program of I could lose everything. The program of I feel invisible. No one sees me. Whatever that program is. The program puts you in a prison, which is the next P. Prison of invisibility, prison of rejection, prison of scarcity, prison of control. Prison of control is one of the biggest one in men. We like to control things. When we're in these prisons, we project onto the world our narrative, our story. And like we said earlier, our brain and our ego will just consistently validate that it's right. And in our projection, these create problems. So these comes out, your problems are your sabotaging behaviors. So for example, if you're in the prison of control and you feel like that if I don't control this or I don't handle this or I don't manage this, then it's all going to go to shit or it's not going to be right. Then you might micromanage your team. You might micromanage your wife. There'd be form of controlling elements. That could then be classed as a sabotaging behavior because the more you do that, the more your team get pissed off, they get resentful, they don't perform as well, and then they leave. And it's like, fucking hell, why do they always leave? So that's the problem. It's your sabotaging behavior. When you repeat that problem over and over and over and over again, what does it become? It becomes a pattern. And the pattern reinforces that your past is the truth and that the program that you're sat in is your reality, is your truth. It's not a belief, it's your fucking identity.
When you're in those tough situations, something like that, the 5 Ps, is something you can lean into and really remember.
It took me a long time to really piece things together and then build processes around it and systems and methods to go, okay, how can I make this easier and understandable? It's psychological language that no one understands. It's like, and I know that us men, we respond really well to frameworks and methods. Hey, dude, here's a tool. So when the pressure is like mounting on your shoulders, here's a tool for you to get through that, not just fucking deal with it in your head.
So I actually wrote down 6 Ps. So I need you to clarify. So I've got past, program, prison, projection, problems, patterns.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice, man. So that's really good. That's really helpful, especially even just the word past, starting with the past, because you said it can be a big thing or a small thing. As a kid, I was tortured by my father and my family was. It was a bad time and it affected the way that I saw the world as an adult. Even though it was horrendous and it was really, really bad and it was all the things that you could possibly imagine. I don't use the word torture lightly. I had a client who was called fat by their dad and was told they can't sing. As ridiculous as it might sound, I would argue that it affects her today more than my past affects me. Mainly because I've done the work around that stuff, whereas this person still believes that they're fat and can't sing. And it's not just that they feel that they're fat and can't sing, it's the meanings behind that, the self-worth that they've drawn from it and all the things that it means if they're fat and they can't sing. As a parent, I just can't even fathom saying anything like that to my kids or anyone, to be completely honest. But that's what happened to her. You think about the implications of a father figure saying that to a daughter or a parent saying that to a child. And then you look at their life when they're in their 50s and they haven't addressed that. They haven't looked at that. They haven't challenged that in any way. And you can imagine how that person is today.
For sure. And I know that because our identity and our programming is so powerful, the way that we operate will do everything in its power to make sure that's true. Our ego doesn't want us to lose. To be clear, it doesn't want us to lose. It's just acting on what it thinks success is. So even though our conscious be going, I don't want to be fucking overweight. Why am I overweight? Why can't I lose the weight? This is shit. I feel horrendous when I look in the mirror. Your conscious is saying that. The subconscious, the ego, is going, no, because we know that being overweight is winning, because that's the program that we're in.
I think it's about that familiarity, right? That familiarity offers us comfort. Even though we don't want it, we know how to be that way. And there's a lot of comfort and reassurance that comes with that way. Say, for example, you think you're overweight and you don't want to be overweight. Although that you are overweight, you know how to do that. You understand the rules. You understand how it feels. You understand all of that stuff. And it's not right. You don't want it, but it feels right because it's so comfortable. The idea of losing weight and changing, that's terrifying. Because how does that look? How does that feel? What happens when I do that? Now I'm all right. I won't bother. It's that feeling of like, the fear of the future. Again, we come back to fear, right? That's what we were talking about earlier, which is and that's why I think that this is brilliant. Past, program, prison, project, problems, patterns.
Thank you.
Many men are taught to be strong, keep going, and deal with things on their own. In your experience, what emotional truth do most men avoid facing about themselves, even when it's quietly affecting their relationships and their happiness?
It's their fear of feeling safe within themselves. It's their own internal fear of self-trust. And what that will do is it will just quietly seep out into their day-to-day living. To tell you what, it's really difficult in today's world because there's so many things that will attract your attention and give you the dopamine hits. And what that does is it makes it even easier for guys to avoid actually introspection and just having moments of quiet and peace and some patience to themselves. It's just sparse. You just don't get it. And so it's really easy to go, do you know what? I'm not going to go and take an hour's walk or 2 hours walk in the woods on my own without a phone to just think about my thinking and think about my life. I'm not going to do that. I might nip out for 30 minutes and I'm probably going to bring my phone and then I'll distract myself whilst I'm on the walk. Or I won't do that. I'll just distract myself on whatever the fuck on Instagram reels or whatever. It's all avoidance to the deeper fear of feeling safe within yourself.
I use the analogy of a pond. If you throw a stone into a pond, there's ripples and you can't see what's in the pond. You can't see what's at the bottom. But once those ripples start to dissipate and stillness comes back, it's only then can you see what's at the bottom. You know that moment at 3 o'clock in the morning when you have all your best ideas and then you get really annoyed and angry because you can't go back to sleep? That's because there's stillness. It's because there's stillness. It's because you're not doing. It's because finally we've talked you into charging your phone in your office instead of your bedroom. So you're not waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the loo and then grabbing your phone because you've seen a notification or whatever. It's that encouraging that stillness in those people that are hyper productive. There's a lot in that productivity. There's a lot in that. That's great. I'm glad that you have that because that's a form of motivation. That's energy. That's all those things. But it's only helpful if you can switch it off, if you can lean into it with choice. I find anytime you don't have choice, you're sort of moving towards addiction. I often say to people, if you can't not do it, then it's not a choice. Do you know what I mean? It's not a choice. I think that's quite important. When you get a message and it's triggered you, if you can't not reply, put your phone somewhere away from you because you're about to blow up your life. You really are. Great answer. We'll do one more question. Whether a man is ambitious or simply trying to look after his family, there's often this silent pressure to hold everything together. What do you think is the hidden cost of carrying that pressure alone for too long?
Pressure is good in a man. It's good. I'm not of the men should do less. I'm of men should do more. And pressure forms diamonds. Albeit, right now you're going through sciatica and you're going through a load of pain. It's really fucking shit. And I know in my own life, when I've been through periods of pain and pressure and stress, I'm like, this is, in the moment, it's not nice, but the other end of it, there's always growth. And so actually, this is about a man being able to contain more, is being able to have the capacity to contain even more and not less. And so he's got 1,000 things going on. Yeah, he is still calm in the chaos. So I'm a big believer in that men shouldn't do less. We should do more of the right things. But it goes back to the training of the Navy. You train yourself to be able to hold more stress, more pressure, and that way we lead bigger lives. We lead bigger missions. We have bigger impact. Where it messes guys up is when they're doing it for the wrong reasons. I love how Marcus Aurelius put this. He said, to be a man, it is to be like the rock, that the waves keep crashing over it. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. I use a similar analogy with the lighthouse. And that's who we are as men. We are the lighthouse. We are the lighthouse. And often it can be chaos around us. Often there's fucking waves and and the seas crashing up against and there's storms. Yet we stand unmoved. And then by morning, the water is still.
I love the way you took that question and you made it about capacity. You made it about resilience, because it goes back to what you said initially, asking the right questions. We can talk about how do you hold everything together, or you can say, how do we increase our capacity? How do we increase our capacity? How do we increase our resilience? Going through hard things makes you stronger. The reason why I go to the mountains a lot is because doing hard things makes your body and your mind work together. And very often I find that when I start to lose my sharpness, what makes me who I am, is because my body and my mind are separating, that we're not in sync. So when I go in the mountains, my body and my mind are like my kids, right? My kids, they don't agree on a lot, but if they want a McDonald's and they want to put some pressure on dad to buy a McDonald's, they will agree. They will come together and they will start working together. And that's a little bit like what happens with me on the mountains. It's like, okay, you need to shape up. You need to start thinking, right, you need to stop just walking up this hill with no thoughts in your mind. You need to start thinking, right, there's top. How am I going to get there? How am I going to focus? What do I need to do for my body? What do I need to do for my mind? How do I do this? And it's that capacity. It's increasing. That's resilience. There's all of it. And I think it's that, isn't it? It's that idea that you're coming at the situation from a place of, I'm not good enough. I need to be better. I'm not good enough. Whereas when you start increasing your capacity, you're acknowledging that, hey, I'm doing this. I just need to be able to do it a little. I need a bit more capacity. I need to be able to hold a little bit more. How do I do that? As I said before, your answers are very full. But the last question I just wanted to ask you is there anything that you'd like to pass along that can help people with their self-development?
The guys that win are the guys that aren't librarians of the mind. So they're not reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts, consuming, and then storing. They're not libraries. They're the guys that will get one insight and then use it. One insight, use it. One insight, use it. And then over the course of a month and a year, they'll get exponential growth. Whereas the guy that's storing all the knowledge from all the podcasts and all the fucking books and it might be a fountain of knowledge, but he hasn't moved much.
It's that difference between that guy that's been doing it for 20 years or repeating the same year 20 times, right? It's that.
Yeah, it is. And, I'm a big advocate of podcasts and reading. And, I am, every time I'm in the car, I'm either sitting in silence or I'm listening to something. That's it. And I use those moments to learn. I've got a bookcase there, read lots of books, and it's insight to action always.
Just as we close up, I just want you to tell people how they can follow you and find your work and anything that you want to direct their attention to that you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn. It's Pete_Taylor, both platforms. Go and enjoy the content.
Anything you're doing at the moment? Books, courses, anything like that?
I always have the mastermind running, the Heroic Man mastermind, and my CEO masterminds is always running. So it's you feel called to that. It's application. You come and fill an application, and we see if you're a fit. And I'm always doing events, always meetups all over the UK.
And podcast?
Yes, Heroic Man podcast. We haven't done any episodes for the last 3 or 4 months, but there is 150 episodes there to consume. So.
You can be forgiven for taking a pause, man. Mate, thank you very much for your time, for your wisdom, for your candor and all the topics we spoke about. I really appreciate it, mate. It's been really good. Today, I've sat here and thought to myself, do you know what? I've been in agony the whole way through this conversation, but I've still listened and I've still pulled it off. So you were right. I got something from it.
There you go, man. Perseverance.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to today's podcast. And I'll see you next week for another episode of the Johnny Lawrence Podcast.